Good morning, I'm Mark Totten. I'm the U.S. Attorney for the Western District of Michigan. I'm pleased to have with me today several partners, including John Duane, the Ingham County Prosecutor, Chief Ellery Sozeby, who is with the Lansing Police Department, Special Agent in charge of ATF Michigan, Jimmy Deere, and then Dr. Natasha Bagdasarian, who is the Chief Medical Executive for the state of Michigan. I called this press conference for two reasons. First, I want to announce several new charges against multiple individuals related to the shooting death of a 2-year-old child here in Lansing this past October. I'm going to share a few words, and then I will ask Ingham County Prosecutor Duane, Chief Sozeby, and SAC Deere to share a few words as well. Second, I also called this press conference because I want to address the profound and deadly impact that the gun violence epidemic is having on our kids. And for that topic, I've asked Dr. Bagdasarian to join me. Let me just begin with the charges in this case and remind you of what the allegations are. On October 24th of this year, Avis Coward, a 43-year-old from Lansing, got out of a white GMC Yukon at a gas station here in Lansing and went inside, leaving Emma Hoover, a 26-year-old also from Lansing, and the mother of a 2-year-old child also in the car. Surveillance video revealed that 1 minute later, a bullet hole appeared in the car window. Ms. Hoover then got out of the car holding her child, whose face was bloody from a gunshot wound. As she did so, we have alleged, Coward's gun then fell out of the car onto the ground. Ms. Hoover handed the child to Mr. Coward, who then quickly handed the child to a nearby person who took the child into the gas station and attempted to control the bleeding while medical personnel arrived. Mr. Coward then returned to the car, picked up the gun from the ground, and put it back in the car. The surveillance video also showed that Mr. Coward used his hand to break out the window where the bullet hole had appeared. Mr. Coward then got into the driver's seat of the Yukon and drove away. The 2-year-old child later died from his injuries. Now, you have already heard two charging announcements in this case. On November 22nd, I announced federal charges against Avis Coward for being a felon in possession of a firearm, and then 5 days later, Prosecutor Duane, Ingham County Prosecutor, announced several state charges against Emma Hoover, including a charge of involuntary manslaughter. Yesterday, a federal grand jury issued an indictment in this case. Now, just a quick word of explanation. When Mr. Coward was charged on November 22nd by our office, it was by criminal complaint. This is a device that allows us to move much more quickly. Under the Constitution, however, federal defendants have a right to indictment by a grand jury, and that's what happened yesterday. That indictment included new charges against Mr. Coward and also added 2 new federal defendants. So let me just review the federal charges. Count 1 charges Avis Coward with being a felon in possession of a firearm. This offense is punishable by up to 15 years in prison. This is the same offense for which Coward was previously charged by criminal complaint. The rest of the counts I'm going to share with you are all new, issued in yesterday's indictment. So count 2 charges Emma Hoover, the mother of the deceased 2-year-old, with being a felon in possession of a firearm. As I mentioned, that's a 15-year offense. Count 3 charges Avis Coward and Gina Scheiberl, a 26-year-old from Lansing, with conspiracy to tamper with evidence. This offense is punishable by up to 20 years in prison. And then count 4 charges Avis Coward and Gina Scheiberl with tampering with evidence, and this charge is also punishable by up to 20 years in prison. The tampering charges concern attempts by defendant Coward and Scheibel to hide or destroy evidence in this case, as we have alleged, including the GMC Yukon, which was found burned out and abandoned here in a field in Lansing, and also a .45 caliber Springfield Armory semi-automatic pistol, the barrel of which was found disassembled and hidden in the wall of a house here in Lansing. These counts are, of course, all allegations at this point. The burden lies on us, the government, to prove these allegations beyond a reasonable doubt, which we're prepared to do. I'm going to pause here and turn it over to my law enforcement partners. We will start with Prosecutor Duane, who can talk about the state charges, and then I'll turn it over to Chief Sosby and SAC Deere, both of whom have been involved in the investigation. Prosecutor Duane.
Good morning. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank Mark Totten, U.S. Attorney for the Western District of Michigan, for filing these federal charges for those involved in the tragic death of 2-year-old King Mohammed, which occurred back on October 24th of 2023. I appreciate U.S. Attorney Totten and his office working with our local police agencies, as well as my office, to address gun violence in our community, especially when that gun violence results in the death of a child. My office has charged Emma Hoover, the mother of the 2-year-old child, with the following charges: involuntary manslaughter, which is a 15-year felony; second-degree child abuse, which is a 10-year felony; felon in possession of a firearm, a 5-year felony; carrying a concealed weapon in an automobile, a 5-year felony; 3 counts of felony firearm, and she is charged as a habitual offender, 4th offense. In this particular case, it's alleged that a 2-year-old child had access to a loaded firearm in a car that resulted in his death. No 2-year-old child should ever have access to a loaded firearm. No responsible parent should ever leave a loaded firearm where it can be accessed by a child. Gun violence is the #1 killer of our children in America. There are far too many senseless and preventable deaths as a result of children have access to firearms. There has to be accountability for individuals who possess firearms legally. There has to be accountability for individuals who allow children to have access to firearms. My office, along with the U.S. Attorney, will hold those offenders accountable, especially when children become victims of gun violence. Thank you.
Good morning, and thank you for being here. It's unfortunate that we have to meet like this, but I do want to say thank you for being here and bringing some attention to this case. As gun violence touches so many of us, and when it touches our youth, it strikes a certain chord. So I want to say thank you to AUSA in the Western District, Mark Totten and his crew, the ATF, the Michigan State Police, Ingham County Prosecutor's Office, Ingham County Sheriff's Office, and all of our neighboring departments that have helped with this case. As you may know, some of our partners were first on scene when this tragedy happened. Tragedy has struck us in Lansing far too often recently, and we are getting to the point where enough is enough, and what you see in front of you is a result of that. Not only are we battling guns, but we're trying to bring awareness to gun owners who have guns to keep them safe and secure so things like this do not happen. Tragedies like this do not happen in the future. What we are doing to prevent future incidents is being highlighted here today. Public safety will always remain my administration's #1 priority, and this, what you see here today, is another step in that direction. The Lansing Police Department will look to continue our partnerships with those that are here today and agencies around us, our community partners, and help seek funding to support community outreach, initiatives, gun safety, education and training, and enhanced enforcement to help with the suppression of all criminal activity, especially those that involve illegal guns, any guns, and those that touch our children. I want to again thank U.S. Attorney Mark Totten and his team for their dedication to this very important cause. Thank you all for being here, and I'm going to open it up now to ATF Special Agent in Charge, James Deere. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Jim Deere. I'm the Special Agent in Charge for ATF Michigan. This case represents a cascade of consequences from poor decision-making. the choice to possess an illegal gun is a choice, and it's a poor choice. To leave it unsecured in a vehicle, another poor choice. That gun caused the needless death of a child in our community. The choice to hide evidence and to destroy evidence, another bad choice. Accountability matters. Accountability matters. That is the message today. We're going to hold folks accountable when they choose to illegally possess a gun, when they choose to possess an illegal gun, and when they choose to store it or use it in a method that is unlawful. In this case, the alleged indictment and the alleged charges highlight a cascade of poor decision-making by these folks. And accountability has to occur. Now, for the public, I would encourage every gun owner in the state, every lawful gun owner, store them. Store them securely. The biggest threat in our community are stolen firearms, and stolen firearms out of vehicles, out of residential homes. These all pose a clear and present danger to our community, and what we're trying to do up here with regards to gun violence. In the end, accountability matters, and in the end, I hope these folks get the redemption they need. Thank you.
Great, thank you all so much. I really appreciate it. Before we close, as I mentioned at the beginning, I also want to address the larger crisis that this case represents. The fact that gun violence is now the #1 killer of our kids. And nothing, of course, more horribly illustrates this crisis than the death of an innocent 2-year-old child. Let me just list some of the incidents that we've witnessed in this year alone. On April 7th, a 6-month-old baby was killed in Muskegon as a result of a drive-by shooting that indiscriminately sprayed bullets into a house. On May 19th, a 2-year-old was shot and killed in Kentwood, just outside of Grand Rapids, after the child got his hands on a loaded gun that had been left between 2 couch cushions. On September 23rd, a 15-year-old boy was shot and killed in Benton Harbor. On November 5th, a 6-year-old child was shot in Grand Rapids when someone fired into the house. And of course, we began this week on Sunday with the news that a 5-year-old in Detroit killed himself after fatally getting a hold of an unsecured gun. You know, let all of that sink in. We should never get used to these types of stories. As the grim statistics testify, gun violence is now a public health crisis. And that's why I've asked Dr. Natasha Bagdasarian, the Chief Medical Executive for the state of Michigan, to join us and to share a few words. Dr. Bagdasarian.
Thank you so much. I want to start out by thanking my colleagues in law enforcement and in the U.S. Attorney's Office, specifically Mark Totten, for inviting me here today. I am a public health physician, and I don't normally come to these types of events, but it's really the time to start talking about gun violence and firearm deaths as a public health issue. I'd like to share with you a little bit of data, and I'll start out with framing this problem. Gun violence is increasing. Despite the statistics, it's increasing both in Michigan and around the United States. Michigan is now above the national average in terms of firearm deaths, and in 2021 alone, we lost more than 1,500 individuals to firearm death in Michigan. Now, as you can see from my next slide, historically, motor vehicle crashes were the leading cause of death for children and adolescents in our state. However, we've made great progress here. And now, during the last 5 out of 10 years, the firearm-related mortality rate has risen to become the leading cause of death for children in Michigan. The leading cause. That means that firearms are killing more children than motor vehicle accidents, drowning, or even childhood cancer. I want to highlight that because, as you all know, firearm deaths are preventable, while some of those other causes, like childhood cancers, are not as preventable as something like firearm death. My next slide really shows who this epidemic is hitting the hardest. One of the things we've seen here in the state, that firearm injuries and deaths are having a disproportionate impact on Black Michiganders and on the youth of Michigan. The highest rates of firearm injuries are in those ages 15 to 24 years. These are the ages where folks should be in the prime of their lives, the healthiest, playing sports and engaging in other activities. And that's also the age group where we see the greatest racial disparities. And I just want to conclude by saying again, gun violence, firearm deaths are preventable. And this is a matter of health. This is a matter of public health. In Michigan, new legislation includes red flag laws, safe storage requirements, and universal background checks. Now, this package of legislation was important progress, and its implementation will be another crucial step forward. But in addition to legislation, many of the public health strategies that we've used for things like motor vehicle accidents and tobacco use, including education and community outreach, have to be used here. The Michigan Department of Health and Human Services Firearm Safety page includes an online collection of resources for individuals and families. And if you would like information on safe storage of guns in your home, please visit sites like projectchildsafe.org. And search for a list of participating local law enforcement agencies in Michigan and pick up a gun lock at no cost in as many as 230 communities across the state. Every child deserves safety. Every child deserves the opportunity to grow up and reach their full potential. And let's work together to keep Michigan's children safe. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Dr. Bagdasarian. I really appreciate it. You know, it's really important that we understand that this case is not an isolated incident. It is one example of something that is happening regularly across the state of Michigan. And so I really appreciate you providing that larger context. Responding to this crisis requires an all-hands response. You know, I'll be quick to say, we are not going to prosecute our way out of these grim statistics. Accountability matters, as SAC Deere said, and that's why my office, I know everyone who's standing here tonight or today, is committed to securing justice when these incidents happen, but it's going to require an all-hands approach. So with that, we'll bring it to a close, and if there are any questions, I'm happy to take a few. Yep. Her last name is spelled, just give me 1 second. It's S-C-H-I-E, B as in boy, E-R-L. S-C-H-I-E-B-E-R-L.
And are these the only 3 people involved in the case that are facing charges?
All I can say at this point is that the investigation is ongoing.
Considering that both Howard and Kruger were felons, have you guys been able to determine how they came into possession of these guns?
You know, that's something obviously we're going to be looking very closely at. We want to understand kind of what led to this horrible incident happening. At this point, though, just given how early we are in the case, we need to limit our comments on what we found in the investigation to what we have in our charging documents. But it's certainly possible that we'll have more to say about that later.
So you don't know yet?
I'm just not going to comment on aspects that we haven't publicly said in our filings. That's a kind of longstanding policy that we have in terms of communications around investigations. But thank you.
Any other questions? Yeah, very little thing, second one. It was reported this week that Michigan State Police, when they take guns that are surrendered through like a buyback program, Detroit or what
You know, I'll say just one or two short things, and certainly if SAC Deer or anyone else wants to comment, they can. You know, I read that article, as I think a lot of people did. I've had multiple conversations with local partners, local chiefs across the state, including in the past day or so. You know, my sense has been that most people did not realize that that's what's happened. I think, you know, there may be a diversity of viewpoints. I think what I've heard has been pretty deep concern about the fact that these guns, which have been seized from people who have committed crimes, the fact that those are probably making their way back out onto the market. I've heard nothing but concern about that. You know, but at this point, I think you know, that's probably all I want to say about it. But I think it's concerning. You know, we are at a moment when there is an unprecedented number of guns on our streets and in our communities. One portion of those guns are illegal guns, and it's deeply concerning. It's concerning for the safety of law enforcement, and it is helping to fuel the gun crisis epidemic that we've been talking about today. So, you know, I think these are policies that need to be looked at closely. I'll also just say I can't verify the reporting. You know, I read what a lot of people read, but I'll share all that for now. SAC Deer, is there anything that you want to add?
I would say, one, I'd refer you to the Michigan State Police on that matter. They're probably better able to talk about their decision-making process to go down that road. As far as my position on it, I think it complicates our efforts up here from a public safety perspective. From that also, not only that, but the story that guns tell us, some of these parts, it's alarming to me as an ATF agent, as I see these guns, as I read that article like you, it makes me wonder what parts are disposable besides a frame and a receiver for these folks. A frame and receiver doesn't constitute a lot of the gun, although federally that is the prior definition of a firearm. So it speaks to there is always an unintended consequence for any public policy, and this is an unintended consequence. And when I read that article, my takeaway was this business is offering this service for free. Well, my daddy once told me, nothing in life is free, and this is part of that. They're in the business to make money, and what better way to make money than to scrap a gun and to part it out?
Actually, Michigan State Police, we did speak to them, and they said they were processing complying with the ATF requirement.
Yeah. That's complicated, but as far as the destruction process goes, they didn't ask for permission to resell gun parts. I doubt that was asked of us. We would find that problematic. It does just comply destroying a frame and a receiver as destroying, quote unquote, a gun. That's my position.